Can I have your attention? And we can have a serious discussion on reality. One of the people here were, this is a question a good question, because sometimes when I talk about the way things are, using this term, it can sound like a kind of passive resignation, because we can kind of pass, well, that's the way it is, tough luck, just stiff upper lip and bear with life. It's not, but that's what I would call a kind of passive resignation from despair, or there's a very negative reaction. But what I'm pointing to isn't a negative response, it's just a noting. Like right now, it's the way it is. I'm not saying it's good, bad, right, wrong, pleasant, painful, indifferent, or what. It's like this. And then now when I reflect like this, then I feel this sense of embracing the moment. I'm not trying to do anything with it or change it or exaggerate it or make it into anything more, but just recognizing. And then I kind of tune into the stillness, what I call sound of silence, in the stillness of the present, beyond the noise, beyond the sounds of the world. There's this stillness, and you begin to recognize it behind everything, so that it's always present here and now. And then the various conditions arise and cease, come and go in the stillness. And then through training and developing, then you're learning to trust and abide in the stillness, rather than just be caught up in the endless stimulation of the changing conditions. And I noticed, like living a monastic life where you spend a lot of time alone, and I talk about the first year when I was a samanera in Nong Khai in Thailand, and spending a year alone by myself in a little kuti, it was just having nothing to do. Just try to contemplate having nothing to do, nobody to talk to, nowhere to go. I only had this little book, Word of the Buddha, could read it in half an hour, and me. And then somebody would deliver a tiffin carrier, these layered carriers with food in once a day. And the mind goes absolutely crazy. At first you think, oh, this is wonderful, peace at last. But after a couple of days of that, you're conditioned to always be trying to fill up something, find something to do, anything. And so then that's why I say peace is boring. People, say, we want peace, pace. But when there is peace, it's very boring. Where war is exciting. Sex is exciting. Violence is exciting. Sports are exciting. Melodramas, like soap operas and that. They just had about peaceful, happily married couple living happily ever after. It'd be boring, wouldn't it? Wonder what, if the archers were just good-natured English people that only were happy and fit and did meditation practice every day and obeyed all the laws, never complained, nobody'd listen. Reflecting on, peace as an ideal, and then the reality of peace. Now, in in the training, like you learn to, like in my own practice, I had this insight into peace, but then my conditioning was not anything but peaceful, and so it reacted in all kinds of strange ways. So I had hallucinations, all kinds of emotional memories of the past from way back, the early childhood, and I started, began to hallucinate sometimes and start imagining things. I get the paranoia and just this feeling of, despair, and all these very negative emotions were dominant the first couple of months. And then, but through the kind of just accepting them, they are the way they are, then eventually it's like a cleansing process. And all these repressed feelings and fears that I'd accumulated I was 32 at the time, for 32 years, suddenly they all had an opportunity to go out. So one time I had this hallucination, and I was sitting there in my kuti in the daytime, and I saw my mother walk out of my brain. I really did. Now, can you imagine anything? My mother walking out of here, and my sister, and everybody seemed to be walking out of my head, and I could see it, and then of course this was hallucination, visual, and then I thought, this is madness. I've gone bonkers. I'm crazy. But then something in me knew that it wasn't that, because I didn't feel crazy. It was just like things that accumulate in one's in one's mind over years that we tend to dismiss or not notice or resist. Through meditation, we began to no longer try to control the mind, and just distract ourselves every time we feel a bit of discomfort or fear or anxiety about life. Patient endurance, and pretty soon these things that one has been frightened of or resistant to or refusal to acknowledge, they'll pass through consciousness, and it is like a purification process. So that's letting go, and the way it is, like this sense of this intuitive awareness. Even though emotionally I thought, I'm going crazy, this is madness. I've lost my mind. There was the emotional reaction. But behind that was the discerning ability to this. It is the way it is, and it's going away. It's not coming in. So the way it is, it's not just and like in monastic life, here it's being a monk or a nun is the way it is. It's not a kind of resignation, but that's not helpful to just resign yourself to conventions and traditions in a passive way out of just feeling intimidated or pressured into doing it. But what it's for is to observe the emotional reactions we have to limitation or conditions that we're experiencing, changes that are happening in the present are like this, the way it is. Then it will bring up our own sense of wanting it to be otherwise, or doubting, despair that arise when things change the way that we may not like or want them to. But that's part of the learning process. The conditions change with having to be with the unloved or having to separate from the loved is suffering. Appayehi tukopaye vipayoko tuko Yampi jang nalapati dampi tukang. We chant that every day. Having to be with the unloved is dukkha. Having to be separated from the loved is dukkha. Not getting what you want is dukkha, is suffering. And so then on an intellectual level, it can sound like just pessimism. It's all suffering. It's just all life sucks and you're all going to die anyway. But it's a kind of passive. It's not embracing life. It's merely kind of giving up to it. And letting go is not just kind of giving up because there's nothing you can do as an act of just resignation, but it's a kind of embracing life, like you're really willing to really feel this the way it is, in whatever way you're feeling it is like this. And so it's like a rising up. Something in me rises up, when I reflect in this way. Or if I get into my passive mode, oh God, there's weight and problems all the time. The world's nothing but suffering. It's the way it is. It's life. And that does not, I'm not rising up. I'm merely kind of resigning myself or excusing life. So also I found out, like this emphasis on dukkha is that the Buddha made as the first noble truth of suffering. When you really contemplate this realm, it is a suffering realm. Because it's just, and it's not it shouldn't be any other way. It's just the way it is. We're all born and we're all going to die. We all know that. And then we all have to experience the growing pains as children with childhood diseases, and then we become self-conscious when we go to school and compete and get jealous and envious and all kinds. These are basic human experiences that happen to everyone. And then growing up, and then getting old and being considered a success or a failure, being approved of or resented by the society, we all have to experience various permutations on these themes throughout a lifetime. So then, and this is all bearable when we have this perspective. So it kind of, I like some of these Christian saints, that feel a joy at being able to bear the cross, or it's a kind of opportunity rather than a kind of self-flagellation and feeling life is terrible and treating me badly. So and just to encourage this sense of embracing life, like this word embracing, when it's like it's taking everything. When you embrace somebody, you're embracing the whole being, not just the bits you like. So, and apply that to life. Embracing life isn't approving or pretending that it's something it's not, but it's a willingness to rise up to it and learn from it. See everything as opportunity to learn. And then to develop a more conscious sense of trusting yourself to observe. Because when you think about yourself from the ego level, you'll always get caught in doubt and I'm not ready, I'm not good enough, don't have enough samadhi, don't have enough practice, I still have so many emotional hang-ups, and I'm not. And you go on like that, I guarantee if you never see through that, it'll go on, carry you through the rest of your life. It just doesn't shut up until you begin to observe it. And then you're no longer feeding it or resisting it, but you you're learning all these conditions. The sense of yourself as this person, this personality, this physical form is then seen from a wisdom level rather than from the personal, judgmental level that we tend to operate from, that we're kind of victims of, caught into that conditioned realm. Are there any questions? Yes?
About pain and suffering, and saying that to free from pain and suffering, and yet actually if you embrace and accept what is, I feel that there's a semantic thing for me, because I feel even if one stays with what is, and rather than taking it personally and add to it, why is this happening to me, why am I going through this, to see my whole family killed in a tsunami, the mind being anguish, the pain in the body is what it is. So is it more about embracing that's what it's like being a human being, rather than adding to it, oh my God, my life is like this is all happening to me, and feeding that energy? Because for me, the embracing and the acceptance of being what is, I find it difficult to think that one can be actually free from pain and suffering, because that's part of the human condition. So is it more about the relationship one has with the pain and suffering, rather than to know it is as it is, this is how much it hurts, or hurts from this form of memory because of illness or an accident, or seeing one's family killed, that is a natural human response, and I can't see how one can be free from pain and suffering, because it's part of human condition. So there's this more semantic thing about not feeding it with, taking it so personally, and feeding it with energy, and feeling, oh, it's only me that's going through this, but this is what it's like to be a human being.
Right, you're right. That's very important. Like the difference, like that's why I go through this realm. This sense realm is like this, So it's a sense realm, and sensitivity means pleasure and pain, through everything, through the body, through the mind, through the senses, and that's just natural phenomena. That's not. It's this realm we live in is a sense realm, and sensitivity, and these are sense forms, so they feel all the time. You feel hot or cold or hungry or thirsty or whatever, and that's just part of the karma being human and living on planet Earth. It's like this. But then the suffering of the First Noble Truth isn't about that. It's about ignorance, wanting it to be otherwise, and taking suffering or pain or stress or unhappiness, whatever degree you might be experiencing it, to use it as to see, it's this sense of it's happening to me. Why should it happen to me? Like, that's the suffering we create, the suffering that we put onto life. And the other is just part of the karma of being human individual in this realm, and that we can bear. And even like loss of loved ones, like losing your family or something in some disaster, or just your old mother at 99 dying, is you still feel grief, no matter how mindful you are, but you're not making a problem about it. You're not creating it into more than what it is. But when someone you love dies, it's like this. And so you're aware, you're embracing the feeling, and you're not, rather than just trying to suppress it or deny it or get involved endlessly in your not wanting it, or why does this have to happen to me kind of reactions. And it's like physical pain. I've had this past week, I had surgery on my back, and so I had this big cyst that was, all through my trip through North America, I had to deal with this. It kept getting bigger and bigger, and it wasn't painful really, unless you kind of suddenly lean too hard back on a hard chair. And then I had it cut open and sutured, and it's not been painful, but the past few days it's been very itchy. And itchy is a sensation that's also a good sensation because it's a healing sign, But also seeing one's reaction to that sensation. And I can't blame the sensation on anybody, or it's just the way it is. And the more I kind of relax with it and just let it be, then I don't suffer from it. But my reaction to itching usually is to scratch it, you see, so I try to get rid of it as quick. But sometimes you can use these, and this isn't a very, nothing great, no great traumatic experience, but it's one of the irritations of life, isn't it? Itching and things. Or like in this weather, you get flies come into my kuti, and then I'm busy doing something, and then they keep flying around my head, and I feel this irritation, wanting to get rid of them. Are you aware of that? That's suffering. The actual reality of what's happening is bearable, But the what I add to it is I don't want those flies in my kuti. I want to get rid of them. And so you begin to discern the difference between wanting and not wanting something and the way it is. Then of course we can be very practical. Like if we have like monks, we can't kill any creatures. So if we have a way of escorting the flies out of the kuti, we're allowed to do that. And sometimes I do take time to scratch my sutures just for the sheer pleasure. It's not like being tough on yourself, but also, learning just in little ways. Sometimes before they get too big, this is what I recommend, Don't wait till the great tragedies and catastrophes of life get at you, but, so much of our life is neither one thing or the other. It's like irritating or disappointing or annoying or whatever. And these are all opportunities to develop mindfulness before it gets too, something really strong, something powerful happens. Because then it was just these little things that, one develops increasing sense of confidence in mindfulness and learning, from just the human condition that you're experiencing. Oh, I never thought of that. I have to get rid of my gun, man. Yeah, well, that's this is where we begin to have more confidence in being aware when we find ourselves getting wound up by something or caught into a reaction. And but it's not judgmental. It's not saying I shouldn't or that, because then it gets into judging and ideas and guilt and maybe blame somebody else. But it's like willing to learn where where you feel most threatened. What happens when you feel, being threatened by something or by somebody's comment or insult or whatever it might be. So it's because life is about praise and blame and success and failure. So this observing is what we can do. And I found it, then it really helps you to get perspective on and develop more confidence in your awareness of situations, not be so sensitive and threatened by life. Because some people, they're so afraid you're going to upset them, and some people are so sensitive that you look cross-eyed and they get terribly upset. And there's a time for political correctness where you're supposed to say everything, never say anything that offends anyone. This kind of desperate attempt to not offend anybody and not be able to say anything very genuine. But so when like in Thailand, for example, they would when I came to live here in England, I gained a lot of weight. I used to be very thin, skinny in Thailand, and then gaining a lot of weight here. I'd go back to Thailand and they say, "My God, you're fat." And to them, that was didn't mean anything. There wasn't an insult. Just commenting on the realities of it. Just stating a fact. But emotionally, I felt very upset by that. I didn't want people to at least say that. Don't mention it. So it was just using something like that with, feeling, because I knew that they weren't, I trust Thai people enough, they weren't insulting me, they weren't being malicious or mean, but just stating a fact, which I didn't like to hear, because I, didn't like to think of myself as fat. Well, it's like the teachings, like in the suttas, especially is what I've used in the Tripitaka. Their teachings always I've found very skillful to use for reflect, because they give you clear kind of guidance on what to do and how to do it, and ways of looking at something. Or they have lists of things. Sometimes Theravada Buddha comes across, and it's pretty just like an inventory of human condition, 10 of this, 7 of that, and it can look pretty dreary if you want to looking for more kind of mystical terminologies and inspiring teachings. But they do have their point, it's more practical. And I found, just these basic teachings, 4 Noble Truths, 4 Foundations of Mindfulness, Dependent Origination. These are kind of the essential teachings that you find in the scriptures. Is what I've used for observing. Check them out, just applying it so that I see it in myself rather than just theorize about it from a commentary or a book. And the thing, like in the first sermon of the Buddha, the Dhammacakkappavattana Sutta, it's arranged, like when the Buddha gave his first sermon, he gives it in this reflective style. So the first, there's 3 aspects to each noble truth. So first Noble Truth, there's three aspects to the second, 3 to the third, 3 to the fourth. So there's 12 insights. And then these aspects, they're called aspects, is a paradigm for reflective awareness. So there's a statement, there is suffering, suffering should be understood, suffering has been understood. So it's a way of looking, like we can all say life is suffering, just as we all agree that life is suffering. And that, but we haven't really understood it. We just agree that life is suffering. and then somebody might disagree. But when we're not trying to convert people to believe that life is suffering, but taking just this very ordinary human experience of dukkha and investigating it as you experience it. The suffering you feel in the present. And by changing your direction from trying to get rid of it or react to or blame it on somebody, you actually understanding it, and then you have the insight, it has been understood. I see it now, this first truth. And then all Four Noble Truths have that pattern to use. So, and it gives you, the first one is to understand, the second one is to let go of the causes, the third one is to realize the end, when suffering ceases, and the fourth is the way of living to not create suffering, no longer create suffering out of ignorance. And this is like this. But even in the scripture, in the Tripitaka, the Buddha in his lifetime, after he was enlightened, he had to get old, and he still suffered from old age, sickness, death, just like any other creature. He still had, you read the stories about the life of the Buddha after enlightenment, and it was, he was praised and blamed and plotted against. People tried to kill him, trying to spread scandals about him. He had difficult disciples that did terrible things. And he didn't, he had anything that happened to me in this life falls into being almost mild or nothing compared to what you read the Buddha had to put up with. In the scriptures. But this is a good sign, you see, for us to contemplate. He didn't really get out of the realm of suffering as a creature, but he did through discernment, through wisdom, and then he still had to bear with the aging of a body and its pains and its problems and the society he lived in. But he didn't create suffering around it. So you never hear the Buddha and never, blaming anybody or complaining. Just sometimes, the interesting story about these monks making a big problem around the Vinaya, and he gets fed up and leaves, and retires. I'm not claiming to be a Buddha, though. Yeah? Paramatta Satya is, of course, defined as ultimate reality. Ultimate truth, and then so this is where, like, mindfulness is the gate to that. It's through mindfulness that we actually recognize ultimate reality, and then it's recognized, and then the samadhi that comes from that recognition or the concentration is a balanced kind of. It's not focused on, it's not a samadhi that absorbs into something to exclude, but it's more like a balance of factors. Like in the Eightfold Path, you have the Samma Vayamo, Samma Sati, Samma Samadhi, where the energetic concentration, mindfulness is balanced, it's complete, it's stable rather than dependent on conditions to support it. But you see, Paramatta, like there's Samuti Satya, Paramatta Satya, and Luang Por Chah used to talk a lot about that, using the Samuti Satya. In Thai they just say Samut, and it's conventional reality. So this is, we have to live in the world of conventional reality, with his physical body is a convention, and the society we live in is based on conventions, agreements, moral agreements, legal systems, cultural conditions and ideas that come out of culture and religion. And so even like the Vinaya is Samuti Satya. It's just a structure for use, but mainly to develop mindfulness around. It's not an end in itself. And then Paramatta Satya is where the result of letting go of the conventions, but it does not mean like destroying anything or getting rid of, but no longer this blind attachment. Like I could see how in religion, any religion, the problems that we have in religious is attachment to the samut, to the structure, to the conventional form, in which we're attached to it, but we don't see the attachment. And then, so then we form strong opinions about if something doesn't fit into our way, our convention, it's wrong. So if you don't, like the Christian conventions that are different than the Buddhist ones. So if one is attached to the Buddhist conventions out of ignorance, then you can only see Christianity as wrong. It's not Buddhist, so it's wrong. There's logic there. And the same Christians do that. They're very good at that. And, condemning all other religions. But the convention itself is strictly a samuti satya, or conventional reality, not to be rejected, but to be recognized, its limitation. And then if it's a religion, you say, what is a religion? Is Buddhism a religion? People ask this question, because you don't have belief in God as its basis. And but religion, in terms of the word itself, is from a Latin word, religio, which means it's the bond that you make to the ultimate, that conventional form that points to the ultimate. So like in my case, becoming a Buddhist monk was like forming a bond, taking on the rules, the life of the Buddhist monk is a conventional form, but it's not an end in itself. It's merely for expedient means pointing at Paramatta Satya. To keep reminding you, to encourage and keep pointing at ultimate reality rather than at conventional reality. So this is, trying to put into perspective the use of convention, because it can be dismissed or rejected. Like people don't like the conventional forms of religion sometimes, or think they're outdated or whatever. So, and then they have reason to believe it, because a lot of people are attached to their conventional forms, which they can't see beyond. It's like the finger pointing at the moon. It's pointing at the moon, not and you only look at the finger, you'll never see the moon. So this is, just see, like I think if it's a real religion, meaning it's a conventional bond you make to use these conventions for looking in that direction of Paramatta Satya and recognizing it, realizing it. And then the conventions can vary. It doesn't mean they all have to have the same. You all have to use the same convention. Because each one of us has to learn from the way we are. You can't learn from the way I am. And so I heard a Tibetan monastery, there's a sign saying 88,000 monks, 8,000 paths. And here there are 22 bhikkhus, 22 paths. Each one of us has to learn from our own, the way what one is. But we all agree, and we've all using this convention. So we support each other through the convention, and then so we're not, what that does is bond us as a sangha. So we're not just my opinion, your opinion, what I think, what you think. It's we kind of surrender using this convention, and then in a practical way, it's based on morality and good manners and good qualities. So then we can learn to live with each other in our different kind of karmic extremities. So otherwise we couldn't live. I don't think 22 men could live together for very long if we didn't agree to this one convention. Yes? Have you suggested that? Do you have any wounds to show us? Well, I mean, if they're not open to other suggestions, there's nothing much you can do. But it's because this is a problem we all have. Of we get upset at the workplace and bring it home and rant. I mean, and so this is where mindfulness helps to begin to, as we, like meditation, helps us to stop, just because it becomes habitual, we can't stop it really. We get so addicted to the pattern we've developed that mindfulness meditation helps us to stop the momentum of these habits. And, like, talking about pushing buttons and things like this, looking at just encouraging people to just stop for a moment, and listen to themselves. Listen. I found in my own experience when I get into this kind of internal ranting, I stop and listen to it. And just just begin to let it just rant inside me, rather than subjecting somebody else to it. And that way I began to get a perspective on it, rather than just using it. Because I found just like this confrontational style where whatever you think you say, and you just let all your emotions out on whoever's around, makes life incredibly painful for anyone around you. And it's not very nice to live with somebody who's carrying all this anger and dumping it out on you, even though it's not directed at you. It becomes habitual. So it's where, many of us have, one reason for practicing meditation was to get outside this habit rather than just, because even like cathartic telling off, or saying what you think, it's still you're making a karmic connection to it all the time. Might make you feel better for a while, kind of get it out of your system, but you haven't really resolved the problem. I'd say I wouldn't support it. I've tried doing that with people. I found it didn't really, it made me miserable too. And so, you're making people around you miserable. And you might love the person doing it, but what they really need is, shut up. Stop. One of these friends kind of, what do you call it, tough love kind of friend. Yeah, it's a good question. But also, it's not just one way or the other. Sometimes people need to express anger and somebody to listen to it. But, so that can be, like cathartic methods can be beneficial in the beginning, but when they become habitual, that's where it goes, it becomes a habit again. And one interesting experience years ago, this was many, many years ago in Switzerland. I used to give a retreat, before we had a vihara in Switzerland, I used to give a retreat there in Bern, and there was a woman there that was kind of middle-aged nurse. She'd go on my retreats, and she was, a really nice person, someone that had always seemed to be very positive about life, and I quite enjoyed talking to her. But anyway, after I didn't see her for a year, and the next retreat I gave in Switzerland, she told me that she felt that she was repressing anger. Somebody told her that she was repressing her anger. So she did this anger therapy where she would go and hit pillows and shout, I hate you or whatever, but aiming always at a pillow. And so then I asked her how did that affect her meditation, and she said, whenever I see a pillow, I want to hit it. she became habituated, addicted to hitting pillows. So next week I'm giving a retreat in Ireland and invite the Venerable Ajahn Amro to give a talk next Sunday. I'll end here.